want to thank everybody for coming out tonight to Quintessential Biosciences. Our official company name is Quintessential Biosciences. Quintessential, as you know, means the best essence of something, and all of the products that we offer are the best essence. And you're going to be able to hear tonight from one of the, really I would say, one of the historians, the founders of our product called Empower Plus Q96. And it's a very special story that Autumn has taken time to write in the book. There are some books that Autumn does sell for the very awesome price of $50. And if you see a sticker on the, that means she signed it. So there's a lot of them out there. I'm guessing she'll sign it.
Those are 30 for sure.
These are 30. 50 for this book and 15. But anyway, we're honored because I was introduced to this product just about 5 months ago. And I had the wonderful opportunity to talk to Autumn's father on the phone. And he and I spent a couple of evenings together talking back and forth. And the product has actually been helping people for 16, almost 17 years. And it's fun for me to meet individuals that have been taking the product for that long. And to hear Autumn behind the scenes talking about going in a closet and hitting her head just to feel alive, and now to see her this strong woman, incredible mother and business woman and author, to know that we have the opportunity to market a product that is there to help people just feel better. And there's so many challenges, as we all know, in life today, and people are looking for answers. The business opportunity is real. For those of you that are interested in building residual income, that's a lot of what Q Sciences is about. And if you have questions about the business, please talk to the person who invited you to the meeting. And if they haven't done the business, go to their upline and ask them, because it's important that we allow people to also build a business they can be proud of, something that we're proud of, to back by products that are changing people's lives. And so tonight, we're really here to have Autumn speak. We're not going to cover much of that, but I want you to know that I've had the opportunity over the last few months to get to know Autumn. And I've had lunch in her house, and she's been to my house, and she's actually staying at my house tonight before she heads back to Idaho. And I will tell you, she's a special individual. For me, it's a lot about courage, because when you hear a story about bipolar or the other challenges that some people have had, the instant thought, I hate to say, somewhat is still negative towards people that may have that. And she's been so open to share her story. In many ways, she's a hero, because to have this woman to be able to explain what she's gone through in her life, and to be able to stand up and say, that's not who I am, it's something that I had, and I've overcome that. And to be able to read it in this story, and then to see her children, and to meet Dana, her husband, who I also think is a hero, being able to share the product. So we're blessed at Q Sciences to have this product that we are now able to take to market. You know, Tony and Autumn and their entire family just market a product that we all believe in with our hearts, because it works. 20 medical publications. Dr. Kaplan, who stand behind us. So please join me in welcoming Autumn. You guys are going to be thrilled, and it's amazing. And again, if you need a book, let us know after.
Darren didn't know he needed to rent a hall. I didn't know. We actually, I just did a small idea group here on Saturday. Really no advertising or anything. I think a few people kind of figured it out on Facebook. And then there were several people in the room that said, oh, I wish I brought my friends. So I was flying back through. I've been in Canada speaking and doing some stuff up in northern Alberta. And I just texted Darren from the airport. I said, hey, I have a thought. Why don't I just do it on Wednesday night, and on the way through it, I'll just do one more night. And, you know, this is what happens. So that's great. I'm really happy to be able to share my story with just as many people as possible. I can't say that it's always been that way. I had a big struggle. I had some panic, actually, the first time that I published my story. It was self-published. It was called These Painted Wings. And it had a red and black cover, and when you opened it up, it looked like butterfly wings, but mushy paint. You know, the kind you do in kindergarten? So, anyway, it was in reference to something I said about forgiving my mom. And then HarperCollins liked it, and they bought it from me, and it became a Canadian bestseller back in 2007. So, here we are now. Several years ago, we moved to Idaho. Just to kind of hide out. I couldn't have a bad hair day anymore in my hometown because everybody knew my history. And you know, people can be a little bit nasty when you're just right there and, you know, school mom and soccer mom stuff. And I just felt like, it's time to get some fresh air. So we moved to Idaho, and the very first day that we got there, my husband and I pulled our camper trailer, which had this book cover, plastered huge on the back of it. And we went out there and we tore the thing off. We're like, we're done. Okay, and we're going to raise our kids and everything's going to be great. And my middle daughter, who would have been 8 at the time, 7, went over to play with the new neighbors. The Binghams and the Stringams were on the same street. We were so excited. And she sat down at that lady's counter and was eating cookies and said, "Did you know my mom used to be bipolar, and then her dad forced her to eat the same food? He just mixed it up in a big bowl." She called me up and said, "Your daughter is telling horrible stories." And I said, "No, she's actually not. Let me give her a book." And then it went book club, Mormon book club Napa. And we did several of those, and here we go. And all of a sudden, now we're in two sciences, which is really exciting. So I hope that I'll give you a little bit of clarification on a couple of things that I've changed my mind about since I wrote the book. And but just know that I'm proud to be able to tell the story and to represent a voice for people who really are suffering. I think that they need a voice, and they need to know it's not the end of the planet. It's not a death sentence, and it's not a life sentence either. And I think that's really important. So if that's a message that you can share with people, I think that would be a worthwhile thing. Before I get into too much, I do want to tell you that as life carries on, I continue to change and get better and feel better about a lot of things. And sometimes it takes time to heal some wounds. When I wrote this book and talked about the time that my mom was having a really bad time after Joseph was born, and she drove us into the river. For years, I referred to that as with panic. I would have panic attacks when I thought about it. And I referred to it as the day that she tried to kill us. And I just want you to know, it was the day that she tried really, really hard not to. And I've come to that conclusion on my knees as I've thought about ways to forgive and ways to let go so that I don't have to be hurt and triggered anymore when I'm raising my little girls. And I know that she did the very best that she could. And if she'd really wanted to end her life, she could have done it anywhere at any time, really, to be real. But she didn't. She didn't want to. And that was a victory. So when I think about that day now, and when you read about it, don't be horrified. But please just understand that I see that as a day of incredible victory, where she was so compelled to do harm and yet fought so hard not to. And I just think that's an important perspective change. It's changed my life. And it's changed a lot of triggers for me. And I know that people can continue from a healthy place, and we get the brain chemistry straightened out, you can make some decisions about what is real, and just change the way you are about everything. And speaking of change, I change up my presentation every time I give it because frankly I get bored. So this is how I do it. Before I go to do a presentation, I will go off into a room and just open the book randomly and find what I'm going to read. And I had one in mind, and then I found a random one for you. It is available on audible.com, and as a point of interest, they were going to hire an actress to read the book, and when I found out, I was really horrified. So I went to a voice coach and sent in an audition tape and won the part of me. I see it now. This is the last of the book. Sometimes I begin at the beginning, today we're starting at the end. I see it now. Because Deborah took her own life, she saved mine. Her suicide set in motion the entire chain of events that rescued Joe and me. But it's not just a brother and a sister who will live because she died. Thousands, perhaps millions of other people, either those mentally ill or the loved ones of the mentally ill, will be spared some measure of grief. Few of those millions will know the part she played in their lives. Few will even know her name, but I will. I used to dream about a day when a lot of people would know her name. And I didn't know how that would happen respectfully. And I'm grateful for Q Sciences and their backing and this beautiful army. I used to tell my dad, someday we're going to build a beautiful army. Sorry, but I think I see one now. I'm really grateful. That's just really neat. I had a chance to testify once about my life, literally in court. Okay, everybody stop crying. Okay, I had a chance to testify once in court. I had to kick my high heels off because I was shaking so bad. And I had actually sat out of the courtroom. I wasn't allowed to hear anyone else's testimony. So for 3 days, sat outside in this, foyer type thing, waiting to be able to testify. And when I finally got my turn, I started right from the horrible beginning. And I get up, I was horrible. I'm hearing the words from my mouth. And you gotta understand, this is actually from the transcript. So there's the narrative, and the words that I'm saying are actually what I said. Really what I said. I'm hearing the words from my mouth. Oh dear, even I am bored by them. After Sabina's touching story, I am Autumn Ativan, putting them to sleep. I must figure out how to seem normal, not boring. It's harder than it might seem to look sane and talk about crazy. Oh, help me, please. By the end of high school, I couldn't even tell time on a conventional clock. My prayer is answered through Sean's mouth, Sean being the lawyer. What do you mean? Just a lot of confusion, a lot of racing thoughts. They were monitoring my art from art class. I still have one of my big paintings that the counselor called me in to talk about, to ask about my thoughts. I guess it was pretty dark. Skip. I jump into the teen years. Mania, too many boyfriends, my marriage in my teen years. My life sounded stranger than I imagined it would. As I expose it to the air of the courtroom under oath, it does sound bizarre, even to me. No, worse than that, my words feel like projectile vomit. My life makes me sick, but not my audience. I can see that now. I can see that talking about sickness might even make me seem normal. Certainly when I was at my weirdest, I never admitted to being ill. So much private information spilling straight from my heart. And I was pretty delusional right then, and I crashed. But my words don't reach the Health Canada agents. They just sit on their benches, thumbing their messages on Blackberries, doodling notes on pads of paper. They don't know me, and they don't want to hear me. I'm a waste of their time. They think I'm a pawn in a game Dad is playing. They think I'm a sob story to get Dad off that nasty $500 fine. I begin speaking to them so that they will pay attention. I couldn't keep a job. I couldn't function. I was paranoid and afraid all of the time. I had a lot of visions of stabbing through my belly and stabbing the baby and then bleeding out. I had it all planned. Crazy, flapping, scratching my face, the same movement over and over and over again, and I couldn't get it under control. I looked like this. First like this, and then like this, and then I'd go over. I'm showing them. They don't look for long. I got to the point where I would see little faces. They were pointy at the top and pointy at the bottom, and they would be in a mirror or in reflective glass. The Health Canada people don't care. They keep their heads down, keep thumbing messages to Ottawa. And I don't want to be telling the story at all, but I keep going. Pearls before swine, Dad would call it. Do you need a Kleenex, Miss Stringam? Sean is in front of me. I went into some major, I'm not even going to go there, I can't read it here. Major self-disclosure about the very worst times on public record, because I needed the judge to understand that I wasn't just your average depressed mom. I was psychotic. I was using the kitchen sink for a toilet, covering reflective glass, and beating myself to concussion, and accusing my husband of wanting to kill me a lot. Calling everybody that we knew from the psych ward and telling them what a pervert my man was, and really did some damage. And I hurt my child, my little 3-year-old, who I barely even remember for those years. I hurt him, and it took a lot. It took a lot to recover. I want you to know that what we're talking about now isn't about bipolar anymore. It was just made for me. But it's about so much more than bipolar, and that's the message that I want to give you tonight. So as we go through my little, I have a 12-slide presentation that I've been sharing with people, and I'm just going to move through it very quickly because I know we're all hot. But I hope that there's something that you can take away from it that can help you as you're sharing this story to understand this isn't about the bipolar girl, and you don't have to say bipolar and turn off somebody who's not bipolar but who really needs help. Do you understand? We're not talking about diagnoses, okay? If you've read the book, how many have actually read the book? Okay, good. Then you know about the pig dose. And I'm gonna, the discovery of Q96, Empower Plus Q96 was made in a very strange way, as many amazing discoveries are. This is my dad, Tony Stephan, and this was his friend David. And back in 1995, they became friends as volunteers for the church. My dad was actually working, he was responsible for the buildings. He was a boiler engineer by trade, okay, and went into property management. He was hired by the church to manage a whole bunch of their church buildings in an area. And David was a volunteer for the church. They were standing around talking about me and all of my stuff, and my brother and all of his stuff, shortly after my mom committed suicide. And David made an interesting observation. He said, "Your son sounds like a pig with ear and tail biting syndrome." And my dad didn't punch him. Instead, he said he felt it, right from the top of his head all the way through his body, that this was an answer that he had been praying for. He didn't understand how that could be the answer, but he knew it. Physically, he knew that what David said was significant. So he said, "What do you do for a pig with ear and tail biting syndrome?" And David told him about how he used to be a high school biology teacher, and then he kind of got sucked into this business of manufacturing and designing swine feed. And he specialized in minerals and in the ratios of minerals. And what he discovered in working with thousands of pigs for 20 years is that in the feed, if he got the mineral ratio wrong, calcium to magnesium to phosphorus to selenium to copper, these ratios, if he got it wrong, it created all sorts of problems for those pigs, including osteoporosis. Pigs would just break their legs. And you know, you've got a pretty good sample when you have 2,000 pigs on a giant farm and they're all eating the same thing. You can see what happens, right? But what he discovered is that when he got the ratio right, they stopped chewing on each other. And that was a significant answer for him, just for his job. It's so much better when farmers aren't losing swine to pig fights. And they really are vicious and violent with each other. Do you know that swine are actually really close to us in DNA? The closest, in fact. And their digestive systems are incredibly, very much exactly like ours. The islet cells, you hear about heart transplants and interesting things we're sharing, organs, experimental things like that. Swine are extremely close to us. So it just made sense to David. Well, if it calms down pigs, it might calm down your son. They didn't have access to me at the time. I was hospitalized, and I was, busy trying 13 different psychiatric medications and living in the hospital. But when they did get custody of me, my dad hired a male psych nurse. I was not allowed to be alone with my son, and my husband had to have 24-hour adult supervision for me or put me into a long-term care facility. He chose to try to get the supervision, and so I ended up at my dad's place. And I'm not going to get into all the gory stories. Sometimes there's some fun stuff we can talk about, but I won't do it. Just read it. Suffice it to say, my dad hired a psych nurse to come stay at the house and wait for the next time that I would try to hurt myself, where he felt he would have legal standing to do whatever he wanted, And so they waited until I went after some sharp objects, and they sedated me very heavily with my Ativan, and then they force-fed me this wild concoction of what I thought were pig pills. They really weren't. They were kinder than that. But it eventually, you know, for a few years became what they called the Synergy Quad program. And they had pills and stuff from different areas, and they were trying to get it into the same ratios as David's pig feed formula. And it was really inconsistent and extremely expensive. My dad was putting up $300–400 a month to get me on the supplements. Before I even agreed, he'd already had my brother on it. And my brother got off of his medication and was doing a whole lot better. So I'm jumping ahead here. But the Synergy Quad program became my treatment of choice after the force feeding, and when I woke up one day and realized that I didn't have the hole in my chest, my psychotic hole where all of the voices and visions would come in. And so I became a willing participant in a big guinea pig experiment. And I went home that week, having quickly gotten off of 3 of my medications, which was a bad idea, went through horrible withdrawal, and ended up in a really, really rough couple of months, weaning off of the last 2 drugs. But I wasn't hallucinating anymore, and that was the biggest thing for me. I thought if I could just get through this without hallucinating, even if that was the only thing that changed, it was worth it for me. Because the worst of my symptoms and my most suicidal times were times when I was overwhelmed with really strange thoughts. Anyway, a few hundred people in small community in southern Alberta started making wild claims about not having symptoms of certain mental illnesses anymore. And they were all desperate enough to do this concoction and spend a lot of money and just try. And so the University of Calgary, Dr. Bonnie Kaplan, caught wind of this, did some interviewing. At first she said there was no way she was going to do anything about it, and then she tried it on one patient and had an amazing response. And so they had to come up with something that could have a placebo. So then they developed Empower. They got it down from 96 ingredients to 30 some odd, almost 40 ingredients, and we only had to take 32 pills a day. That's all. It was easy. So there was a lot of vomiting involved, and one of my friends actually had to go for impaction to the emergency room because, like, I guess she wasn't drinking enough water with her 32 pills a day. Yeah, with some complications, you know, but and you really had to be sick to do that. But there were still plenty of people who were willing to try it because they didn't have any other options. And then a couple of years in, somebody contacted my dad and said, "Don't you know about amino acid compounds? Come on." So they came up with a new technology that reduced 32 to 15. And we all went, "Yay, 15! Only 15 pills a day." And they were like, you know, big. And then just recently, they came across a new technology. And this is the part where we should say nanotechnology, micronization happened. And so they improved it one more time with the technology, and that's what brings us to Empower Plus Q96. Because now, the average dose is somewhere between 4 and 8. I think we still don't really know for a therapeutic dose what it really is, because I think people are going to be sensitive or not sensitive, and I think it's going to take a while to really figure out what a standard therapeutic dose is, but I have seen people who I did not think could respond to 4, respond to 4. And I think that's pretty fascinating. Okay. So do we all understand what the formulation is? Vitamins, minerals, amino acids, designed after the pig feed formula, but not actually pig feed? Okay, sometimes I've had people leave and go to the veterinarian's office after presentations and try to get it, like, just to be clear, okay? Not pig feed. And I hope from the story you've learned this much so far. The thing that makes Q96 different is the critical balance and ratios learned for over 20 years in a pig pen, superior absorption, which is what, especially now, my goodness, with the nanotechnology, amazing, amazing to me, and sufficient amounts to address deficiencies, because taking a little tiny bit does not a deficiency solve, and we'll talk about that in a second. Tell me another company that gets to take over a whole family story and 17 years of development and 20 medical journal publishings. I'd like to see one. because I think this is a first. And I think it says a lot about our trust in Q Sciences and also our trust in just the goodness of people out here who are prepared to help and just be rational and only make claims that are true, and that kind of stuff is really important. And you know what? I've learned you don't have to exaggerate the truth. There's enough really cool talking points that you can find right in the research that you don't have to make it up. It's pretty amazing. Dr. Bonnie Kaplan was the first, and one of my dear friends now, to take on doing the hard research. And she actually got $500,000 funding from the Alberta government and started a placebo-controlled study. And then the federal government caught wind after the first stuff was published, and they were lobbied, and they came in and said, no, it's an illegal drug, and that's where the whole red umbrella thing comes in. So when you read the story, you'll understand why I wear a cheesy red umbrella everywhere I go. But she has been a defender of truth, and she has pled with other scientists to just understand that the scientific method doesn't mean one mineral at a time. It can mean one thing, and the one thing is the Empower Plus formulation. And so that's how she's managed to get other researchers around the world to conduct research at 14 different universities around the world now. And this is my favorite one, and I'm going to tell you why. Julia Ruckledge from Canterbury. We'll go to her in a second. There's 3 common claims that come if you read the research and really look at the charts. There may be studies on children on the autism spectrum, but we don't say, this cures autism! Ah! We got the cure! No, you didn't. But what you did find is something that causes autistic children to find calm. It reduces rage, this is proven, reduces rage, tantrums, inattentive behavior, self-injurious behavior. It helps regulate sleep. All of these things are documented in the research. So that's what's been discovered. It's also similar to the response that a bipolar person has. It doesn't make you kick all your habits and not have panic over stuff that happened, but it does leave you calm and clear-headed and more capable of making good decisions. Do you see where I'm going with this? So when I'm talking about this to people, I'm saying it's about calm and clarity and coping. People say coping, because coping is like a skill, right? Let's find out. Okay, calm, rage, impulsivity, self-injurious behaviors. Who can tell me an example of a self-injurious behavior? Cutting. I've got scars all over the back of my hand. I was a picker. Pick and scratch on the same spot and then pick the scab off and do it again. Deep scars. Sorry? Yes, picking. Picking, rocking, banging. What's another one? Oh, and I was a pounder. You find me in the closet with a concussion because I beat the heck out of my own head. And just, there's something about that behavior that is endorphin releasing, and it can become an addictive behavior. And so even after somebody comes to a point of calm, it's still a temptation because they're just like masturbation, other addictions where there's an endorphin release, it can be an addictive behavior. Okay. Okay. Clarity. And this is my favorite. This is the one that we were talking about with Dr. Ruckledge. Last time I drew it, and it was crazy, but this is good. ADHD adults, placebo-controlled study, okay? In the middle of the study, while they had all been putting together documentation on a lot, like probably 50 different symptoms, one of the charts they were using was a depression, anxiety, and stress scale. And so they already had baseline data on this, right? So halfway through the study, that horrible Christchurch earthquake happened. And like parts of the university fell down. They had to work out of tents. They have pictures of them in their research tents. So this is a circumstantial situation. Like no one made up the earthquake, right? Sometimes when someone's having a situation with mental health, you might think it's kind of in their head, right? They're just exaggerating things and making it up. Well, real life stuff can be stressful too. But this is a really interesting thing to me, and I think it's changed the way the researchers see it, the reason that this works entirely. 1 week after the earthquake, people on the placebo reported that they felt about 11% better
And people taking the Empower Plus formula, Q96 formula, said, oh, we feel about 42% better than we did last week. They're not talking to each other. No one knows what they're taking. Okay, so this is blind. 2 weeks after the earthquake, they're still having aftershocks. They still should be worried. The people who were on the placebo, 19% better. That's better than 11, right? They're getting over it. 63% better than they were 2 weeks ago. What does vitamins and minerals done in the right ratios in an absorbable form with enough volume have to do with the way you feel about your whole darn town falling apart? Well, where's the connection? Don't you wonder? Isn't that fascinating? I get really excited. I drive around smiling about stuff like this because I just think that opens up all sorts of understanding. When somebody is overreacting to a stressor and they're getting blown off the planet and having a fit about something that seemed really small to everybody else, is it a personality problem or is it a filter problem? What is it about taking vitamins and minerals that's changing the way that somebody filters a crisis? Do you see? I'm not fragile anymore, but it used to take nothing to get me to just blow over the top. And I'm not like that anymore. And you gotta kind of wonder, right? Is it personality changing? I don't know. Okay, so here's the question. A lot of people ask, and they go to their doctors and they say, I'd like to take some vitamins and minerals. And the doctor says, well, this is more than the RDA on a couple of these. No, this could hurt your liver. And we don't understand. I can't tell you how many times people have gone and asked permission to take vitamins and minerals and been told no. So I want you armed with this information. You don't have to ask permission, by the way, of anybody to eat vitamins and minerals, but I'm just saying. From the Food and Nutrition Board, Institute of Medicine Dietary Reference Intakes. Got a little government chart published in the National Academy Press, Washington, 2001. This is a bell curve, okay? This little graph, right? See the bell curve? This is risk of inadequacy. So what would happen? What happens if you meet the risk of inadequacy for vitamin C? Yeah, scurvy. Yeah, your gums bleed, your teeth fall out, and your skin like that, right? Okay, that's risk of inadequacy. Who can tell me the risk of an adverse effect for taking too much vitamin C? Oh, loose stool. Okay, how much do you have to take? I'm trying it. Yeah, a lot, right? Okay. Who can tell me what the adverse effect is for taking too much vitamin A? You heard that story? Yeah, it's really hard to, encephalitis. You can get a really bad headache and it can cause problems for you. Okay, so we know that it's true on both ends, right? The RDA is set right here. It's set well into the bell toward risk of inadequacy. I don't know why it's set so low. I know that no one dies of taking too many vitamins. I have not seen that. I've seen too much medication kill people, but I haven't seen too much vitamins take people's lives. But they've set the RDA way back here. So you might say, okay, well that's fine because we all get what's in the RDA, right? You actually don't. And this is something that's really interesting. There was a study with 70 health nuts. And 70 people who actually believed that they were going to get what they needed out of their food, like the doctor says, or what the dietitian says. Well, you can get what you need out of nutrition. Just eat your broccoli, and, greens and things like that. And out of 70 people who were having their diets analyzed and who really actually believed that they weren't eating the burger or the taco thing I ate this afternoon, they're eating like nuts and seeds and coconut oil and stuff. Not a one of them actually met the RDA on all 12. They might be able to get enough calcium or some other major mineral, but they're not meeting the RDA, even when they're trying. And this was an amazing study. My husband uses it to tell the Amish all the time, because they think because they're farming that they're going to get what they need, and they don't, because they have all the same problems that we have. Do you know what the UL stands for? That's the upper limit. Upper limit is where the government says never cross it, ever. Don't do, that's megadosing. Where is it next to risk of adverse effects? way, way off. I don't know why these are set so low. I'm sure some of you have theories. Keep them to yourself. But I'm telling you, it's set really low. And you can all guess, come up with your own reasons for that. Okay, so here's my theory. We used to have this on like 12 or 16 points and had it broken down on psychology and stuff. Now we just got it under 4 because I think that's all we need to do to make this logical. You can enter the cycle of illness at any one of these points. And I'm going to just use my story as an example, okay? And you can tell me at the end where you think I entered the cycle of illness, all right? Okay, let's start with digestive problems. My family has a genetic disorder. All my kids have it. We have terrible guts. And every single one of my children have been to the emergency room as before the age of 1 over this issue. Like, it's a big deal. And it was a big deal in my family, my mother's family. It's our lovely Italian heritage. And sorry, that's just how it goes for us. So we have digestive problems. And I've learned to resolve some of those things through dietary changes and understanding my body a little better. But it's not something I could do when I was psychotic. So I'm just, that was a problem in our family. Digestive problems can lead to deficiency. Why? Inflammation in the gut keeps minerals from being reabsorbed out of the stool before the stool passes. Passing undigested stool means you're not absorbing anything. Do you get where I'm going with this? It's pretty logical. Let's see, symptoms and behaviors. Can somebody enter the cycle at symptoms and behaviors? Have you ever heard of a 13-year-old that goes out drinking with their friends and just acting a little funny and rebellious, does something that they would normally never choose to do, and then is stressed out about it, and it causes all sorts of stress and trauma for them? People can enter the cycle by creating it with symptoms and behaviors, and that gets things started, and it leads to stress and trauma. Stress and trauma leads to digestive problems. Why? Where do you feel when you're stressed? In the gut, and it shuts down digestion. It's kind of a primal thing. You've heard of fight or flight? Fight or flight puts us into a situation with adrenaline that literally saves our energy for fighting or running, not for digesting. What if you are chronically in a state of fight or flight because you're always remembering something that you just can't let go? PTSD, right? Think about it. A wicked car accident, a violent act against you as a child, or and it triggers things. And so people feel it in the gut, and it comes around. I can tell you that I could have entered anywhere on here, anywhere. My mom, I think I entered at deficiency, to be honest with you. My mother, at 17, loved Twiggy. Twiggy. She wanted to be so skinny, just like Twiggy, so she didn't eat. And then she binged and purged. And so she got pregnant when she was 17 and had my sister Angela. And then 11 months later, she had me. So did she even did I stand a chance? No. She told me before she died that her mental illness started with my birth. And I used to take that personally, but now I know it's a fact. I don't know anybody who can have a major eating disorder, be robbing themselves of nutrition for years, get pregnant and have 2 babies within the same year, and expect to come out healthy. And I didn't come out healthy. I came out screaming. Miserable baby. Allergic to everything. They called me Old Yeller. And I know I have a loud voice, but my heavens, it was so insulting. And then, she was stressing me out, and I was stressing her out, and then she's threatening all sorts of crazy stuff. We just fed each other for years, right? And you can see how that comes around. So sometimes people say, I don't have a mental problem. I've just gone through a really bad divorce. And they don't understand how a circumstance can actually change their brain chemistry. Sometimes people say, I don't know why I'm depressed. I just had my stomach stapled. And do you know what the stats are in suicide 2 years after a stomach stapling? Look it up. Disturbing. And that leads to deficiency. And deficiency leads to mood problems. And sometimes, for a normal person, it's going to take a while before they become deficient enough to be robbing their brain. So it takes time for the cycle to go. Is there a place that you can break this psychologically? Yeah. I believe that when you're in the cycle and you're sick, the only place that you can logically break it to begin to change all the rest of it is right here. And it seems like the most illogical place for some people because they're saying if you're stressed, go to counseling. But ask a counselor how well a bipolar person or a person who has rage and tantrums or can't sleep is doing in counseling. So I know people who've been in counseling for 10 years and gotten nowhere. I mean, you know, that's not necessarily the best place to end it. We all know you need to deal with the stress and trauma, but you got to deal with it from a healthy place, like what we talked about at the beginning. So sometimes the only thing you can do is learn to swallow. And I can tell you that for anybody to add something to their daily routine that they've never done is hard. So learning to swallow, and when it was 32, it was impossible. But even learning to swallow 4 consistently, and remember your Q pack or your X pack or whatever, is hard. I have several X packs in my purse because I can't, you know, you get on with your day. It's hard to add something to your routine. Okay. This is my last slide, I promise. Over 12 years of data collection in Canada, people on the phone lines were noticing that some people did better than other people. And people would get frustrated. They call me and say, I had some good benefits, but it's still not really well, and I've got a problem with my gut, or I've got problems with this or that. And so there were always add-ons, and it was extremely expensive for people to keep running down to the health food store and adding on. Well, let me tell you something that's kind of amazing. Q Sciences was thinking way ahead. Before they ever met my dad, who formulated the Q96, before they ever knew anything about us, they already had all these other products that they were prepared for, and they were looking for a brain product. They were looking for their lead product. Like they had it covered. And it's amazing to me how these things all work together because it's true. But they would have told you if you had called the True Hope line 5 years ago and you needed a whole system, what are the things I need to do to really be well? They would have said, you need to feed your brain with the micronutrients, and you need to take aminos because you've taken some medication, and that's going to help you with the withdrawal. And there's some really cool science about that, grabbing up half-digested SSRI drugs in the bloodstream and sweeping them out so they can't reattach to your muscle mass, stuff like that. Hormone balance. Empower Plus does not balance your hormones. Really good cofactors, excellent ingredients for chemistry in your body, but there are still other things that happen with people. And hormone balance is mood affecting as well. So they'd be like, maybe you should go to your doctor and check on some bioidentical hormones or something. And then they would say liver and heart support for people who have been self-medicating and abusing themselves and taking tons of medication or whatever, or deficient, having something for liver and heart support. And then of course a probiotic is absolutely crucial. Do you know the stats on ear infections, chronic ear infections as a child related to ADHD? Do you think that it's really high incidence connection? So do you think that it's the chronic ear infection that causes the ADHD, or is it the treatment of the ear infection that causes the ADHD? I've seen kids who stayed the first 3 years of their life on antibiotics. What is their gut looking like? Yeah, it's a mess. Probiotics are absolutely critical because we do things that we just don't even realize. We just don't even know, right? And so Q Essentials covers all of that stuff off, and I think that's really cool. And I got to tell you, I would have told you a few years ago, I didn't think there was a lot of room for improvement for my mood until I turned 35 and discovered the importance of progesterone, which just went crash. And so I lived high estrogen for a while, and that was miserable. And then I really lived high estrogen, and in my time of misery just kept on getting longer until it was pretty much half of my life, 2 weeks out of every month. And if I go anywhere, I go just a little bit schizophrenic. That was one of my diagnoses, right? Rapid cycling bipolar with schizophrenic tendencies. So I know I'm losing it a little bit if I hear only out of this ear. And usually it's pleasant now. It's just music or something. You just think, come on, Mom, turn the music down, you know. Like, speaking of my mother-in-law, be over at her house and hear something and go, what? And then I realize, oh wait, I am just super sensitive and I can hear everything, including my husband breathing and my daughter chewing in the other room. Like, come on women, you know, right? Super, super sensitive. PMS type stuff. And so I got really hooked on my progesterone cream, and it worked wonders and had all sorts of side effects because the dose I had to take was very high. And the first month that I got a hold of Q Essentials, I had just come back from a cruise with my husband for my 40th birthday in January. And we showed up home, and lo and behold, there's my nice box. So I was really busy. I didn't even look at the ingredients, I have to say. I just thought, we'll see what they're doing now. Started popping stuff. And 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from my pharmacist who said, are you okay? You've left your progesterone cream here. It's still hanging here. And I went and looked at my calendar, and I was already 9 full days into the cycle where I normally would have been every 12 hours without a miss. I had bottles all over my house and in my purse and in the car, because if I got trapped, by the time it cleared my system, I was just really hard to, I was miserable. And that was just purely a hormonal thing. And I think, and I'm just extreme in every way, so you know. So I managed to go a whole cycle without progesterone cream. And then being the skeptic that I am, because I really am, and I figured, you know, you don't have 17 years on Q Vitalize, so I don't know what it does. So I went off of it. So I caught thinking, maybe I really just didn't need the progesterone like I thought I did, you know? Yeah, I did. Day 12, bam, back on it again. So I did a whole cycle like that, and now I'm back on. I'll never go without it again. I can't believe the difference without the side effects of the progesterone, just feeling really good. So once again, I've had another really cool miracle, but this one thanks to the Q Vitalize. I just want you to know that there's so much to be learned, and you don't have to know it all. You don't even have to know like a little bit. But to just know this, that calm and clarity and an increase in coping ability is fantastic no matter what the diagnosis, or even if you're undiagnosable. That's amazing. If you take those things and apply it to somebody with any kind of an issue, just a mom, you've got a different person. And you can watch that. Put your healthy friends on this stuff. Just put your healthiest, don't go after your sickest friend, go after your healthiest friend and see what a 10-day sample box does for them, right? If you have people who are sick and who really need help, there is help for them, and you're not it. You lead them to the product, and then you tell them to go to micronutrientsupport.com, and they're going to be working it out for pricing so that it's not going to be expensive. It may not cost anything at all at the end of the day. But you don't want to be responsible. Don't take that on. You are not a doctor. You didn't put them on that med. You don't need to advise them on how to get off of it. But know this. If somebody is taking a mood-altering medication, they can't do both for a very long time. They just can't. And as long as you know that, and you can tell them, well, start on, 2 or 4 a day, but you better get some advice about that medication, because you won't last. You're going to start getting really agitated, and you're going to feel over-medicated, and you're going to have to make a decision. And people will say, well, it's vitamins and minerals, like it's never changed my medication before. This isn't just vitamins and minerals. This actually works on the brain. It changes your brain chemistry in a way that they haven't experienced before with Centrum or whatever. Do you guys know what the 96 stands for? 96 hours. I think that's a really cool reminder. Do you know how long it takes to get your average over-the-counter multivite from raw material into the bottle? Between 4 and 7. That's a great stat. Why does it cost $40 or $50 or $60 for vitamins and minerals? Because these ones work. Because they're food and not rocks. And they've been ground so long and prepared so well that your body actually recognizes it and can use it. And how do you know? Because it actually makes a difference when you take it. Right? Okay, let's take 5 questions. And then we're going to go stand in the foyer and visit or something. Does anybody have a question? Yes?
I have a couple of friends and stuff that are one's dealing with bipolar and the other one's dealing with depression. I I'm bipolar myself, and I have depression and stuff that's the seasonal one.
Right.
And I'm wondering, with this kind of thing and stuff, is it actually going to get to the point to where you deal with anything? Because like when I go off my meds and stuff, I've been off the deep end. I've been off when it's been saying, well, you shouldn't be going off your meds like that and stuff. And
Right, and you
stuff,
shouldn't.
but you don't realize it at the time and stuff because you're like, well, I'm already feeling like I'm crazy with the med as it is. And so you're like, well, maybe I just shouldn't be on it, and then you take it off.
Right.
Are you going to have that kind of effect when you go, if you accidentally go off of them? Or
Oh, I
run out?
see. Okay. Oh, so you're asking me if I get sick when I stop taking it? Yes. Do I get sick really fast? No. Because it washed out time on minerals, and to actually become deficient again takes time. Like, if you stopped eating vitamin C completely right now, how long would it take you to get scurvy? Weeks. Months, maybe. Depending on your body. But you get vitamin C in your food, and that's what I'm saying. It takes a while to create deficiency-related stuff. I went off of it for a week. At a time when you're reading the book, you'll get it. There was a time when we were really scared we weren't going to see it again. The government was destroying it at the border and calling it an illegal drug. And I was pregnant, and I'm scared to death, and I'm thinking, and I actually got a letter saying, you need to go back to your psychiatric care and see your physician about medication because you're not going to get this again. It's an illegal drug. And it was only an illegal drug because of who was taking it. There's an interesting regulation that was put in place in the 1930s, and bipolar people can only be treated with drugs. That was just the rules, along with a lot of other disorders. So as soon as a bipolar person takes vitamins and minerals, it magically turns into a drug and needs to be regulated as a drug. So I was scared, and I thought, I gotta know. I'm the worst case scenario kind of girl, right? Something bad happens, or I think something might, and the only way I can be calm is to go, okay, what is the worst thing that could happen? And then deal with that. So I thought, okay, the worst thing is that I never get it again. So what can I do to get through this pregnancy and not end up back in a hospital? And I decided I'm going to see what my washout time is. I lasted a week before I started having what I would say are really active nightmares. And you get that feeling where you're not sure if you're awake or asleep, and then it kind of carries into the day you've had that. It's a bit bothersome. Yeah, 1 week for me, but that's where I go. Yes?
Is there any reference, of anybody you put out that has borderline personality disorder?
Okay. There are two sides to mental illness. There's a chemical side of mental illness, and then there's the side with all the coping things that we've done to deal with the chemical side. So Tourette's, borderline, OCD, bipolar, ADHD, all of these diagnoses are made up of behaviors and chemistry issues, right? And there's no magic pill for the behaviors. So somebody with borderline has created all sorts of coping mechanisms around them. And in order to deal with what's going on up here, they've had to create a whole storyline around what's going on. It's a coping mechanism, and it can change, and I've seen it change in people, but it's there are habits that need to be broken once the clarity comes in. So clear heads can help you to change your behaviors, but it's not a magic resolution for things. I still really was hard on my son. It was the thing I did. And I had to logically say, I'm not going to scream at him anymore. And then I had to work on not doing that. The screaming wasn't part of the disorder, it was a coping thing for when I was overwhelmed, right? Sure, hi.
So you mentioned, I mean, as we're distributors and giving it to people that we know and care about, and they are on those medications, and we're, obviously the first question is, well, should I go off my meds? And obviously we say we're not a doctor, where, we would recommend that you do that. I think trying to find a path to say, okay, you should stay on 10 days. What would you say the recommendation is? That they stay on 10 days and see if they see a difference, and then seek help from their physicians, like you said, are going to look at it and go, well, don't go off your meds, that's dangerous, and that's just a multivitamin.
Right. My answer when someone says, should I go off my meds, it's always no way.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you touch it until you get the proper advice. And you can go to your doctor and ask him, but I'm going to tell you, go slower than he says. Be more patient than he is, because they tell people to go off fast. So slow is better, but you just tell them to go. If they're on any medication that is mood altering, like not thyroid, right, or heart, but we're talking about mood altering, just say, make a phone call, get a free consult, and they can tell them. It's not your, you didn't put them on that
And
med.
that's the micronutrient support and.
.com, yeah.
And is the first one consultation free? How does that work?
I'm not sure. I think the whole thing's gonna end up being free at some point.
Is that run through True Hope though?
Yeah.
It is?
Pink shirt, pink shirt. And silver hair. There you go.
My husband clicked on the links for the science in the email that we received, and he said all he could read was abstracts, and the abstracts didn't convince him. Is there a way to find the full articles that he can read, the
Yes,
science?
yes. And you can look them up online and buy them. I don't know, I know that True Hope has access to the full articles. I don't know that they can distribute them or if it's property of someone else. So I think if you want to read the whole thing, you got to find somebody like me who has a finder and you can say, yeah, sit down and read this. Or you know, because it's owned by the publisher. So they do charge. They charge to read the entire thing. I can tell you that I've read them.
Would it be on PubMed, do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, we have them. If she wants to leave her
Have you got
email,
'em?
we'll send you the full-blown ones. We got them from Tony.
Oh, good.
Oh, wow.
Okay, there you go.
So just leave your email and we'll make sure you get them.
Okay.
That's great, Darren. Thank you. With the green shirt.
I have two questions. How do you get a hold of an ingredient list, and do you have formulation for very young children?
Ingredient list is on qsciences.com. And for very young children, they've done studies on like 5-year-olds and had to have it approved through peer review before they were ever allowed to do it, and found that it's safe even at the maximum dose when they were saying 15. And we've participated in blood studies and all sorts of things to check for sludging, and it's safe. It's food.
How do they take it, or is it?
Oh, kids can learn to swallow pills, and some do, and those who don't like it, I've heard of, they used to have recipes floating around between moms supporting each other on blogs. You can probably find them if you look up Empower Plus and look for blogs. But salsa, if your kid likes salsa, that's one that hides really well in. Yogurt, you know, just open a capsule into some yogurt or some cereal. Don't do anything hot, because it changes the vitamin and it just frankly makes everything taste bad. You just want to keep it, you know, in a small enough dose that they can just get it down quick.
If anything been done with epilepsy,
I do, and you know what, I'm worried about epilepsy because the medication is mood altering and it can't be maintained for a long time in concert with the vitamin without having agitation from epileptic medications. But there's a risk of reducing epileptic medications and causing seizures. So that's a really serious decision. I have seen people come off of medications and not have seizures again. They don't have a study on it, and I'm not sure what I would do with my, I'm not lying. I know what I'd do with my kid. But that's a serious one. Seizures are big. So I think it's connected to nutrients, but I don't know how fast somebody turns around or if it's safe.
you talked about washing out the nutrients. We should be able to store up, you know, since you've been taking it so long, doesn't it store up longer than a week?
I think that my guts and my disposition is different than the average person. You know, most people haven't been full-on psychotic. So I think I just kind of walk a line like that. I certainly am more stable for longer than I would have been in the early days. And I have hope that with the new formulation and just having even more getting into me because of the new absorption, I expect to see a change maybe in the longevity, but that has yet to be seen, right? It's going to take some time to know. There's a question over here. Does that answer your question? It did. Okay.
If you're taking supplements and bioidentical hormones, should you take it with Q96, with the Women's Essentials, or should you give yourself a while before you
Transition? You know what? I don't know.
or taking, if you're taking them that same day?
Right.
What do you think?
I don't think that it's a bad thing to take both because it's not hormones that are in the Q Vitalize, it's herbs that are supposed to balance estrogen for women, testosterone for men.
If you
So,
could take your supplements together, say you're taking vitamin, your omegas, would you take it?
oh sure. Yeah, if you want to take fish oils or an extra vitamin D or something, you can take it with.
So what about an 18-month-old?
An 18-month-old, when, I'll tell you what I did with my babies. When they stopped nursing and they were on rice cereal, I would just open up like a little half a cup and mix it up for them.
And you notice the difference?
Yes, and I especially noticed the difference when my youngest daughter refused to take it after she started on solid food, because she became quite sick. And by the time she was in first grade, she was totally diagnosable. And it really, it scared me for her because we couldn't get her to take it. And then we had a real good talk with her about what was going to happen with her brain if she didn't, because I mean, she was serious. She could have been seriously diagnosed, disability style. So,
I just want clarity on the amount for the children.
a child can take 4. They can, yeah.
So you just try one, see how it goes, and you see it.
And if they ever break it open in their mouth, you'll never get it into them again. I'm just saying. Okay, so lousy. You want to talk